It is time for ball. He is ESPN's Tom Luginbill, and it is presented each week by MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on at MyBookie.ag. They will give you that sign-on match of 50% up to $1,000 at MyBookie.ag. We got a lot to get to, a couple of open jobs. We got some big games to talk about. He is Tom Luginbill. What is going on, Lugs? How are you?
I am doing good, man. Everything is going great. Just getting sadder and sadder as this season winds down.
Yeah, it's tough to see it go. In fact, you're going to be at the old school bell, USC UCLA, and that is USC's final regular season game. Hard to believe.
Unbelievable that UCLA and USC are in the two positions that they're in right now, to be honest with you, as they depart the Pac-12, head on to the Big Ten. Neither Chip Kelly or Lincoln Riley thought this was how it's going to end in 2023, I can tell you that.
No, both of them coming off two losses, but we're not going to waste any time on that game. Those are non-contenders. We're only going to talk about.
I'll deal with that later.
Yeah, deal with that later. Later. We got some job openings. Let's talk a couple job openings. Assuming you were Ross Bjork and assuming you had all the money in the world, which apparently Texas A&M does, give me some names of guys that you think could finally unlock Texas A&M. It's been a mystery to me. When you look at the number of games they've won historically, their facilities, it's one of the most underachieving programs in college football. But somebody will eventually unlock it there. Who do you think could unlock Texas A&M?
Well, first off, they don't need to try to win the press conference. They need to win the long haul, which likely means targeting and researching and investigating guys that maybe aren't on the radar right now, right? A Lance Leipold, a Jeff Traylor, a Mark Stoops, guys that have been proven substance-oriented program builders that have done it at places where you don't have all the bells and whistles and you don't have all the resources that are afforded to you. And, I think the other thing too is you're going to have to find somebody that in today's day and age can maximize recruiting yet still tie player development into it without name, image, and likeness getting in the way.
Yeah.
Now that's going to be difficult to do because that's my biggest question right now. And you just referenced it. You've got everything known to man that you could possibly want to be a championship level program. Yet ultimately they've had several athletic directors over the last 25 years, several presidents over the last 25 years. They've had 2 10-win seasons in the last 25 years. They've only come close to sniffing Atlanta one time, and that was 2012. All right, so now you have to ask yourself the question, what's wrong with the players? Because they have way too many good players to perform to that level. And my question would be, and there will be people who will say, oh, you're a name, image, and likeness hater and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to find answers here. Well, what are Texas A&M's players playing for? Are they playing to capitalize off of being a high-profile recruit, and that's why they went to A&M, because it was the best bag? Or do they want to be the best version of themselves? Are they committed to the loyalty and the allegiance to Texas A&M to be a national championship caliber program? And if so, are they willing to put in the work to do that? Or is it just about the individual that's trying to get his along the way? And whoever comes into that job, and this is why I focused this, and I brought up Jeff Traylor, a Mark Stoops, a Lance Leipold. I brought up people that have a strong history of player development and maximizing production. Because that's what's been lacking here. A lack of maximizing production, a lack of player development. They've already got really good players. In some spots, you could say they have great players. But what's wrong? And it's a fair question to ask. What is wrong? Now, listen, the Connor Wegman injury, I think, was huge. That was a big injury. I think it took its toll on the program. But this has just been a program that doesn't know how to win. Plain and simple.
And it is perplexing. But I mentioned, there are schools that, people that weren't around for the 80s and 70s don't remember that Florida wasn't what it was until Steve Spurrier, I use the phrase, unlocked it. Yeah. Howard Schnellenberger unlocked Miami one day, and they realized we could be a football powerhouse. Mm-hmm. Nick Saban unlocked LSU, and every coach since him, with the exception of Brian Kelly, who's only in his second year, has won a national championship. He won one, and every coach since him. So he unlocked a program. Sometimes it just takes a guy to go in and find – I guess Dabo Swinney, you can make an argument with Clemson.
Sure.
He unlocked that program to an extent. Kirby Smart. Mark Richt had success, but Kirby took it to another level and did what Georgia's never been able to do. So that guy is out there for Texas A&M. You just got to hit it right.
Yeah, and I would point to Kirby as being a great example of what I was describing, and that is somebody that can take the elite player that's coming out of high school and get them to play at an elite level at the collegiate level. And in order to do that, that player's got to be willing to put himself aside for the betterment of the team, in the understanding that if I play to the best of my ability and the other guys around me play to the best of our ability, all of the stuff individually will come. Oh, and by the way, you'll probably be winning a lot of championships if you're willing to do that. If you're not willing to do that, and it's just about individual accolades or name, image, and likeness, it's only going to take you so far. And you know what that so far has been so far? 8-4.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, to your point, he had a generational, or A&M had a generational quarterback in Johnny Manziel that got them close enough to Atlanta they could smell it. Alabama, of course, still went that year. They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Alabama went. The COVID year, Jimbo had a 9-1, which, again, included a loss to Alabama, so you weren't getting to Atlanta that year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's really the times where they were even close enough to the SEC championship game to smell it. And when you have invested as much as they have, Lugs, in facilities and in coaching staff, you got to be closer than that.
Well, not only that, with NFL players. Look at the players that have come off of that team. The Myles Garretts of the world. Okay, you've got the big wide receivers at Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Mike Evans.
You've got Mike Evans. You've got several offensive linemen. You've got defensive linemen. I mean, again, high-level players. And now I would make an argument, and to Jimbo and that staff's credit, because I do think they work at recruiting. I think they've had a lot of help with, the resources that they have in today's day and age. I would argue that this last 2 iterations of their roster on pure talent is the best talent that program's probably ever had as a collective group. All right. Well, what's preventing them from getting over the hump? That's the question that has to be asked.
There is another job opening, this one in Starkville. We'll discuss that one with ESPN's Tom Luginbill in just a moment. A reminder, Ball is presented each week by MyBookie.ag. Code next round at MyBookie.ag to get that sign-on bonus of up to $1,000. They're going to give you that 50% match up to $1,000 at MyBookie.ag when you use code next round. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag code next round. That is MyBookie.ag code next round. Also, Manscaped. The male products from Manscaped, great Christmas idea. They've got that great handyman razor that you can travel with anywhere. They've got the beard hedger beard trimmer that I use on the reg. They've got that lawnmower that takes care of the undercarriage and the entire body. They got the weed whacker, takes care of your nose hair and your ear hair. All those are specially designed for all those things. And then don't forget their boxer shorts, the great male body products, all right there at manscaped.com. And because you watch this show, you can use code BROWN20. That is my last name, BROWN20, at manscaped.com to get 20% off your first order. Code BROWN20 at manscaped.com. All right, Zach Arnett is out very quickly, Lugs, before he even finishes his first full season at Mississippi State. That has been, it's been a difficult job at times. I mean, you could make the argument that it is the next to last job coaching-wise at the Southeastern Conference. I don't think it's there every year or every time they hire a coach.
Right.
But the only one I would say is definitely a worse job, always is definitely a worse job, is Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. So if you're Zach Selman, the athletics director there at Mississippi State, what do you do about your job opening?
Well, I think, you've got to consider high-profile assistants that you think might work, but you've also got to look at other coaching candidates that are at other places where it's maybe as difficult as Mississippi State, yet that individual's had success. The difference being Mississippi State being in the SEC, most notably being in the SEC West, and the challenges that are inherent with that don't necessarily come with some other jobs. Like I mentioned Lance Leipold, right? And Lance Leipold, like I look at Lance and I'm like, I don't know if he would really care about the Texas A&M job.
Right.
But I think he would look at the Mississippi State job and go, you know what? That kind of fits my personality. That's a challenge of grit and lunch pail and, Everybody thinks you can't do it, which is what everybody thought about him at every place he's ever been. And that would interest me. I think Rhett Lashley is another guy at SMU who intimately understands the Southeastern Conference. Another guy that I think is a bit intriguing because I do think there has to be some quirk. There has to be some uniqueness. There has to be some type of twist offensively that it makes you different. And that's Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, who, oh, by the way, is undefeated while nobody is paying attention. And with what they do offensively, that could be an interesting one. But the thing that challenges an athletic director like Selman there is how do you get somebody that's really, really good at a job that's equal or better to leave that job to come to Mississippi State and tell them they got a better chance at winning a championship than they do where they're currently at? That's a hard sell.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it is. And you're just banging your head against the wall sometimes in the Southeastern Conference. And that conference is only going to get more difficult. I mean, Oklahoma and Texas come in and it just bumps the pecking order down for everybody that is below Oklahoma and Texas. And no matter what you think of State, I don't think anybody's going to say consistently they can be in front of Oklahoma and Texas. So, the job is only getting more difficult. And, State is one of those programs that actually has gone to Atlanta. But now that the SEC is no longer divisional, you've got to be in the top two to make Atlanta. I mean, your path to even playing for a championship. I would say this, though. In all these jobs that might be down the line jobs, a 12-team playoff changes things a little bit. Because now all of a sudden I'm not going to be judged on going to Atlanta. Or if I'm a Big Ten coach, going to Indianapolis, or going to Dallas if I'm a Big 12 coach. Making the playoffs to me is going to become that level of judgment, if that makes any sense. So instead of me being judged about whether or not I ever play for a conference championship, maybe I never do that. But if I'm in the playoff 2 out of every 5 years, 1 of every 5 years, I think my fan base is okay with that if I'm at a school on that level.
Yeah, but that would mean that Mississippi State would have to be a 10-2, 11-1 every 2 to 3 years, which may be hard as well. And I think that's the one thing you've got to ask yourself, because I think there are some diehard, really devoted, loyal Mississippi State fans that make that place a very difficult place to play at home. I mean, it is rough there, man, for a home game. But you have to ask them, in today's climate and what's going on around you, would you be happy with a coach that year in and year out goes 8-4, 9-3, maybe is in the running for a New Year's Six bowl game, punches out a 10-2 once every 6 years? Is that what you're looking for? Because likely at the top of the scale, it's probably what the expectation level would afford. I don't know if it would afford anything above that in the current climate. As you mentioned, with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, it just gets more difficult.
All right, he is ESPN's Tom Luginbill, and he joins us on Ball each week, and the show presented by MyBookie.ag. Don't forget code next round to get that sign-on match when you make your initial deposit. They match it at 50% up to $1,000. MyBookie.ag. That's when you use code next round. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag. Also, don't forget our apparel provided by Roback, Roback.com, for all those great hoodies, the softest hoodie you will ever find. The great quarter zips, golf shirts, crew neck sweatshirts, amazing pants, all right there at Roback.com. Code TNR20 to save 20% off your initial order at Roback.com. Code TNR20. All right, let's talk about some games on the field. Tennessee got blasted at Missouri. I mean, one of the worst performances of the Josh Heupel era. I give Missouri credit for that, by the way, bouncing back from that loss to Georgia and playing the way they did against Tennessee. And
Missouri's pretty good, man.
Yeah, they are. And that's a heck of a coaching job by Eli Drinkwitz, a guy I've been critical of. I've not been his biggest fan. But coming off that loss at Georgia and beating Tennessee the way they did, that was a heck of a coaching job by him.
What do you think should be, not what is, what should be the better job in the SEC, Mississippi State or Missouri?
Well, you follow recruiting closer than I do.
Then it would be Mississippi State.
And that's what I was going to say. I've always felt like if jobs seem to be equal, you tell me who's in the better recruiting hotbed. The state of Mississippi, as you well know, per capita puts out as many NFL players as anybody. And you're a border state to Alabama. They've been able to come to Alabama and steal some players who also, per capita, puts out as many NFL players as anybody. And you're a border state to Louisiana, who, per capita or not, puts out as many NFL players as anybody.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, you're in a recruiting hotbed. And on top of all of that, and I don't know how, and you tell me how important this is now. For years, the state of Mississippi had a really good junior college football program.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I don't know how with the transfer portal, I don't know how important that is anymore.
Well, it's impacted the junior college level significantly. In fact, it was the first thing to get hit in that first transfer portal cycle. And so it hasn't been as impactful. But I think what happens with the transfer portal is you have a lot of, as you referenced, really good players coming out of the state of Mississippi that may go somewhere else. Well, guess what? When they get in the portal, they may want to come home. And they're good players. Maybe they're an upgrade for you. But I brought that up because it just shows you how good of a job that Eli Drinkowitz has done with this group at Missouri. They're really good.
Yeah, they are really good. Gary Pinkel obviously did that before him. That said, Tennessee was the losing team in that game, and they got blitzed in that game. And now you turn around and host Georgia. You can't convince me that maybe they weren't looking a little bit ahead to this Georgia game. I don't know why, because they were playing a good Missouri team. Do you give the Vols any chance? The Vegas line in this, mybookie.ag, is somewhere around 10. Do you give them any chance of staying on the field with Georgia?
Well, I think you have to because of the environment, right? You know, if you asked me that question and this game was in Athens, it's a bit of a different answer. But here's what I like really as of late with Georgia is the more you try to doubt or challenge them or tell them they have holes or that they're not what everybody was expecting them to be, the better they seem to play. And by the way, the schedule that everybody was saying was so bad hasn't turned out to be all that bad. And they've taken care of business. I mean, listen, they basically took the Alabama model against Ole Miss and duplicated it. And it was a dominant performance against a good Ole Miss team. And I don't know if Tennessee is capable, even at home, is capable of being error-proof enough to hang with Georgia. They'll make mistakes. And Joe Milton will make a mistake. I think they will have a turnover, if not more than one. They'll have penalties. And I think once that starts to happen, Georgia just starts. It's like the chums in the water. They just start circling.
Yeah. And you mentioned the game being at Neyland Stadium. Georgia, you know, it's interesting when you look at them, they, as dominant as they have been of late, and they do have Brock Bowers back, so they're back whole on offense. Mm-hmm. But it as dominant as they have been of late, they still trailed against Auburn. Mm-hmm. They still trailed in the second half against Auburn on the road. Second half at home against South Carolina. Second half at home against Missouri. They have been a dominant team, but they still have trailed in 3 conference games in the second half. I mean, not like, I get a busted play early. This is a second half deficit that they have had 3 times now in conference games.
Yeah, and where were those games?
Well,
Auburn was on the road?
Only one was on the road. The other 2 were at home, yeah.
But it was Auburn.
It was. Tough place to play.
Auburn is a tough place to play, and I think so there's some commonalities there. But I think that, listen, we've seen teams throughout this season, virtually everybody but Michigan, have had their moments where they'll have a quarter of a 2 in a game where they won't play very good.
Yeah.
And do you finish the game? We've seen that with Texas. Texas has figured out ways how to get to the end of that clock when it reads 0 and be on the winning side of the contest. But maybe they didn't play very well for the third quarter. Played really good in the first and second. Figured it out in the fourth. Georgia's no different. And Ohio State's done that to some degree a little bit. Now they've worked themselves out of it some as of late. But again, the schedule in the Big Ten, I think that what we found out about Penn State is they're a team with NFL-level players that doesn't play at an NFL-level style, even when they're at home, regardless of whether they're on the road. So how good is the conference top to bottom to give Ohio State or Michigan any type of challenge? And so I think when we talk about that, Georgia's not immune to that either.
Getting Brock Bowers back, it was an offense that Mike Bobo seemed to figure out how to call plays without Brock Bowers there. I mean, they played pretty well offensively without him. It wasn't like this glaring absence that they had that a lot of people thought they would. So once you figure that out and now you add him back to the equation, it will be interesting to see if they can even take that next step forward with him back in there and some of the other guys that stepped forward and were producing with him out of the lineup.
Well, you swapped him and McConkey, right?
Yeah,
while you
that's
lost
true.
him,
Yeah.
you got McConkey back, and what an impact he's had. Because you can tell that the connection between him and Carson Beck is very, very strong. He
Yep.
trusts Lad McConkey. He knows he's going to be where he's supposed to be there. They're actively targeting him. I mean, you watch that, and I know it's played endlessly on a loop on social media, but you watch that Sutter come back and go with Kirby Smartle on the sideline, and Lad McConkey just makes the defender look silly. But like those types of one-on-one plays, if you don't have him and Brock Bowers,
Yeah.
maybe it's a bit of a different conversation. But to have that, the timing of that, get one back for the other, I think really helped ease that transition.
Ball presented each week with Tom Luginbill by MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign into MyBookie.ag. They will give you that sign-on match. When you make your initial deposit, they'll match it at 50% up to $1,000 at MyBookie.ag. That is when you use code next round. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. MyBookie.ag, code next round. MyBookie.ag, code next round. Also, Lance'sLock.com. 13 games on the board for Lance this last college football weekend. He went 10-3 in those games and was up 7, almost 8 units in that time. You can jump on board now for the remainder of the college football season and the bowl package coming up soon. Daily, weekly, monthly, season-long packages right there at Lance'sLock.com. College basketball, NBA's off to a hot start in the NBA as well. Lance'sLock.com. All right, let's wrap up with Huskies and Beavers. Washington going to Corvallis. Tough game for the Huskies, whose defense seems to have left them of late. And that seems like a bad formula for going on the road and winning in what can be a really tough place to play in Corvallis.
Vegas, baby. Have you ever been there?
No, heavens no. I've been close.
Well, listen, all I know is if you've been to Mount Pleasant, Michigan on the same weekend that I've been there, I had to ask the question.
Yeah.
So you do actually need to go. You should go and spend a couple of weeks up in the Pacific Northwest and go to Eugene and go to Seattle and go to Pullman and go to some of these outposts like Corvallis. Like, you'll find out real quick why it's tough to play there. It's tough to get there. It's tough to get in and out of. And the stadiums are so right on top of you that it's just really difficult to play. And right now Oregon State's 5-0 at home, and they're not out of a Pac-12 championship race just yet. And that place will be rocking. I think the one thing that helps Oregon State is they have the ability to play some keep away from you, because they can line up and do what SC was not capable of doing, and that's just say, hey, we're going to run it. We're not going to allow you to be on offense because we're going to maintain possession of the football. And Oregon State can do that to you. They can demoralize you running the football with Damian Martinez. And then I think defensively, I have to give Washington credit because you put up 35 points on that Utah defense. Again, very impressive. I talked about that earlier in the season when Oregon went up to Salt Lake City and did it. So I think offensively there will be challenges for Oregon State on defense, but it's another defensive team that could create some challenges for the Huskies. Michael Penix has been fine. They've been able to run the football. You're right about the defense, but I still contend in that conference. If you are on pace and you're on schedule on offense, you can get away with being above average on defense and win a football game. All right. What you can't get away with is being SC in Colorado. Right. And that's where I think, Washington still might have a slight nod, but right now Oregon State's favored -1.
I cannot get past this fact that Oregon State is one of the teams left behind in all of this Pac-12 exodus to the Big Ten and the Big 12. And they're the one team that can completely screw it up for the Pac-12 right now, because they get Washington this week and the Civil War against Oregon next week.
Yeah.
Back-to-back wins by Oregon State, and it probably, no matter what else happens, spells doom for the Pac-12 and the college football playoff.
What are you? I'm not convinced that chaos is over. I think we're going to see.
No, I think we're going to see it Saturday. Yeah,
we're going to see something we're not expecting to see.
Yep.
Might see it multiple times. You don't know. Like, listen, I know they're not the better team, but if I'm Texas going on the road in Ames, Iowa against Iowa State, that's a creepy place to play.
Yep.
You're without Jonathan Brooks. Like, there's a lot of bad things that line up there. There's just, and then you got teams like Alabama and Auburn, who they've got.
Yep.
But somebody is going to get bit. And hey, listen, I'm here for all of it because I want to see this down the stretch. I hate it when everything holds chalk and the committee gets to do the easy thing. I don't want the committee to be able to do the easy thing.
No, give me all the chaos you got, my friend. Give it. I think we're going to get it Saturday. I'm hoping. I think this is one of the games too. Washington at Oregon State. I think it starts there. All right. He is ESPN's Tom Luginbill. He's on his way to the Victory Bell game. The Victory Bell, USC and UCLA, and he'll have that game out there in LA. The show presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign on to get that deposit match of 50% up to $1,000. MyBookie.ag code next round. All right, enjoy LA, Luginbill. We'll see you next week.
We'll do it, man. Thanks.